Welcome to the podcast, Natasha. I'll do an introduction for you. I'm CJ Gross. I am the founder of Ascension Worldwide and the author of the book, What's Your Zip Code Story? Understanding and Overcoming Class Bias in the Workplace. I'm joined today by Natasha McKibbin, and she is an organizational culture and belonging consultant. Welcome, Natasha.
Thank you so much for having me, CJ.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, what's interesting is that when we first met, you were in the UK and I was in the United States. And then ultimately we flipped this summer. You came to work with to do some work in the States, including with my organization. And then I went to the UK, specifically London and Oxford, which is the reason why I bring that story up is because while I was there, I attended a presentation on belonging. And it was on well-being and diversity, and it was two separate tracks. And the more and more I heard about, consultants and HR professionals and wellness consultants and VPs talk about what this looks like within their organization, to me, and this is really a question, but what I assumed is that from a global perspective, definitely in the UK, well-being is a big deal and it's equal with diversity. And so that's the first question I have for you. But I guess maybe we should back up and just really talk about what is wellness? What when we say wellness, what does that really mean from an organizational perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So that really is a big question. What is wellness? Well, I think wellness means something different to every individual, right? Because we all need and require different things to thrive. But I would say the common themes would be balance between your mind, health, your body, health, and your spirit, health, right? And when I say spirit, I don't mean like the religious kind of spirit, just your energy levels and your satisfaction in your life and how you feel about yourself.
So are organizations actually tackling those things, like specifically in that way? I mean, obviously they are. They have heads of wellness in their organization. But I would. So let's go back to my second or my first and then made it second question, which is it big in the UK and is it equally as big in the United States? Or, this is just out of curiosity, my own curiosity.
Yeah, I think in my experience, so I was working in HR in London before I came over to the US. And I do find that in the UK, it has been talked about a lot. And we tend to be a little further along in a lot of organization when it comes to it being a thing and a theme that is of importance in organizations at the moment as well. In the US, I would say, especially after COVID and the pandemic, it is very much a hot topic now because they're finding that candidates aren't looking just for a good salary anymore. Organizations need to provide more than just a good pay packet to attract those candidates now. Candidates are looking for good benefits, right? They're looking for perks. They're looking what kind of brand and reputation the organization has in regards to how they treat their employees, right? And also what kind of sustainability or environmental impact the organization has, whether they're even conscious of that, right? So I think at the moment it's a hot topic everywhere. But in regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion, I would say organizations in Europe are a little further ahead in the conversation than here in the US.
Yeah, that's what I gathered because there were two different tracks. It was like, if you want to go into diversity, equity, and inclusion, you go into this room or down this hall. If you want to go and talk about wellness, you go into this hall. And I was going back and forth because I was so excited about, all of this information. They were talking about neurodiversity, all these different concepts that we don't dive into the level of that you do in the UK. That's basically my experience. But anyway, let's talk about, from when we think about wellness, to me, there's a correlation from wellness to belonging, how we want our organizations to create a space of belonging. So let's talk a little bit about what are the components, what are some of the things that organizations are focused on when they focus and develop wellness programs?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say it's important to define what the opposite of wellness and well-being is, first of all. So when you think about wellness, as I mentioned before, it's all about balance, all about the relationship you have with yourself, with your environment, with the people around you, right? So of course, when you are out of balance, it affects your mental health, it affects your relationships, it affects your performance at work, right? So it has a huge impact in the workplace. So organizations can focus on promoting a culture of well-being by, first of all, educating their employees, providing training on what well-being is, mental health as well, because there's a lot of stigma around mental health. Still to this day, people don't understand what it is. People don't understand how to identify when somebody is struggling, right? Because we're not necessarily taught how to identify emotions very well when we're growing up. You know, even our own emotions, let alone somebody else's, right? So how do we manage that from an organizational perspective when we do identify that somebody is struggling, or perhaps their behavior changes in the workplace, you know? So I would encourage organizations to go through a discovery phase, right? Check in, do pulse surveys, employee engagement surveys, ask the right questions, perhaps do focus groups to check in on employees on how they're doing, how they're feeling, tap into their creativity and find out where the gaps are, you know, how they can also have a voice in moving the organizational culture forward to create that sense of belonging, right? Because there is a very big difference between fitting in and belonging, right? Because when you fit in, you change yourself to mold into what is expected, right? But belonging is when you can be and you have the space to be your authentic self, and your environment accepts that, right? That is where wellness and diversity, equity, and inclusion overlap.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It seems like employees have been fitting in to cultural norms so long that they don't even know that they're fitting in. They go to work and they're one person, and then they go, you know, even maybe at lunch, you know, or mentor relationships, they're another person, and then when they go home, they're a totally different person, and maybe when they're by themselves, they're another person. So they, and this is what I have been hearing from employees and employers. The culture is not set up for belonging, but it's so hard to make the shift. But it sounds like this is also affecting our mental, our physical, and our spiritual health, as you mentioned.
Yeah, correct. So up until, you know, fairly recently, in regards to our history, the workplace has been mainly made up of males, right? And the workplace culture, and also the way our society has set up, you know, the Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, you know, things like that, is all revolves around a male culture, right? But since the pandemic and since our society itself is now changing stereotypical norms, right? Where it's not the woman that just stays home and looks after the children or the house, or, you know, feeds everybody. Men are now expected to, right, and also want to have more of an active role in the family life. So one statistic that's quite shocking, actually, in the US, in 2020, almost 46,000 people died by suicide in the United States. That's one death every 11 minutes.
Wow.
Right? But the thing is, that is interesting here, is white males accounted for 70% of those suicide deaths.
Wow. So what's the correlation to, you know, the wellness and?
Yeah, so if we think about the majority of people that make up the workforce still are still males, right? And our society is moving along with the times, but the workplace is not.
Mm-hmm.
That is where you get the issue. The demands of the workplace, the expectations of the workplace are causing, right, or at least aren't helping with people's stress levels, which in turn accounts for ill mental health. Stress has been called the health epidemic of the 21st century by the World Health Organization. Now, 1 in 6 working adults have symptoms associated with mental ill health. So right there, those statistics tell you that organizations need to do more in regards to taking care of their employees' well-being.
Absolutely. I was sharing with you before we started recording that my business partner and I went to the beach to Puerto Rico to do our retreat. But we also took a step further and worked from the beach, where we actually had a whiteboard at the beach, and then we had our boogie board. So we took breaks and we did like a whole business plan for 2023 at the beach. And so we posted it. And it was one of the highest viewed posts that we have, or that I put out there. And I believe the reason why is because people want to figure out how to do it, but we've been doing it the opposite way for so long. We don't know what work-life balance really means. We think it's maybe a post, or maybe it's a nice thing to say, but how do we actually do it? So that leads to my next question. So are there any trends that are happening out there? Or are there any, initiatives that companies are doing, anything interesting that the viewers could say, oh, maybe we can, implement this into our organization?
Yeah, there's lots of stuff. So I think the pandemic was a very big learning curve for everybody, especially organizations, and it really impacted and changed the way we work, right? So that's where remote working and hybrid working all of a sudden became a norm, right, in the workplace. And candidates are now asking the question, right, if there is an option to work remotely or work in a hybrid setting where they're not always in the office. So organizations need to consider and reevaluate all of their roles, all of their job descriptions in their organization to see, does this role actually need to be present in the office every single day? Because people don't want that anymore, right? They don't want that. They want the freedom, right? And a lot of people have caring responsibilities at home. They want to flex around at school pickup and drop off, right? After school activities, and everything that goes along with it. So I would say ensuring that flexibility, and it also opens up the market to people that couldn't traditionally fit into the 9-to-5 working day.
So that's interesting, because what I'm hearing also from HR professionals is that they're losing candidates, great job candidates, because they don't have a work from home or hoteling or hybrid policy. Now, I'm also hearing the totally opposite from some, and usually it's my tech companies. They're saying that they can't get their employees back to work because they're going, oh, it's the opposite. They are like, we don't want to come back into the office. They're paying for their Grubhub, they're paying for lunch and breakfast and dinner. So all these things that they're trying to do to get people back. But I think what I'm hearing from you is like a balance. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It just has to be balanced. And companies need to really look at assessing these job designs and functions to see if it's required to be in person.
Yeah, correct. But then you get the issue and the challenge of, how do you create and reinforce an organizational culture that transcends the four walls of an office now, if you have a remote workforce? Now, this is the importance of technology, right? And leveraging technology at the moment. Because without that,
you've given me a almost like maybe a new course, right? Because when we think about how we design something, you almost have to throw away the old design and create something totally new that didn't exist before, which is the definition of innovation. So it's almost like you have to get some people who have worked in the office, who have done both, who have, only worked at home and design thinking from that design thinking concept, develop something new that didn't exist and try it out, and don't be afraid to make some mistakes. Don't be afraid to, in some cases, you're going to ruffle someone's feathers as well. So it sounds like it's a time to be innovative as it pertains to wellness.
Oh, 100%. And also the traditional ways we look at performance as well. Mm-hmm. Having a hybrid or remote workforce is going to change how we perceive right, performance and presenteeism as well. Because just because somebody is turning up to the office every single day does not mean they are performing, right? Or they are achieving that maximum output, right? And also it's the same if they are not in front of your eyes or in the office, it doesn't mean that they're not working either, right? That becomes a performance issue. Yeah, so it's really important to define the difference between the two.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear maybe some strategies on how to do that, because we have in some cases is, not hiring managers or managers kind of, having that ideology and that way of thinking that you have to be in front of me and doing work a specific way. Now, one of the things that we've seen, and we've actually applied it with our consultants or our full-time employees, is that we give you a task to do, and you have a deadline. If you meet the deadline, great, and it almost turns you into somewhat of an entrepreneur, where you can not get paid for the hour, but get paid for the value that you bring to the hour, which ultimately means that you can get paid more money, because if you can get a job done in less time, does that mean that you should then go pick up the next thing to go do, opposed to maybe you have responsibilities in the house? Maybe you can go to the beach, or maybe, and that'll give you more energy to focus on the task and get it done. And maybe you want to pull up overnighters so that you don't have to work the end of the week. So I think it gives employees and employers options.
Absolutely. Options is key. Options are key, because now that organizations are able to consider candidates that are remote, then potentially they could be in different time zones. You could run an organization that's 24/7 all of a sudden, right? From the comfort of everyone's home. You also need to consider generational differences as well, right? Because a person that is towards the end of their career are going to have very different needs to somebody that is at the beginning of their career. But one thing we can all agree on is that nobody likes to be micromanaged, right?
I don't think anyone is like, do you micromanage here? Because I'm actually looking for that. I don't think that people are looking not to.
Yeah. So another thing that has come about in recent conversations in the HR world is the definition of a leader, right? People aren't wanting leaders to be that authoritative kind of prescription and traditional boss, I would say. They are definitely not leaders, right? As we define them in this day and age. You're only a leader if you have followers, and willing followers at that, right? So we are defining leadership nowadays as people that are inspirational, right? That have a very well-rounded skill set, that can inspire, that can drive initiatives forward and bring people along on the journey with them, right? So when it comes to creating that workplace culture for a remote workforce, you need the right people in the right roles, especially in leadership.
Yeah, so then there's going to be another challenge, because how do we find these people, or how do we develop and retool them in that way? And the other thing is too, the right leaders should also be practicing what they're preaching, as they say. If they're telling you to take off and not answer emails when you're on your vacation, then they should do the same, which becomes a big challenge. There's one strategy that companies use, and they're starting to use it more, where there's no unlimited time off. But it is a catch-22, right? So there's unlimited time off. And so people are taking advantage of that in a positive way, where they are working and working, and then they take the time off necessary to accomplish their goals. But I guess the only other side is, if you're taking off too much, you still have to meet your quota. So the challenge is that at the end of the year, we're still finding that employees they're taking off, but it's still adding up to the same amount of time. So this is a different challenge that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, one organization that I was reading about recently, they implemented this unlimited time off initiative for their employees. They found that their employees took less time off in the year than what they were offering before. So now they've re-implemented a cap, which was less than they were offering before, and have reinforced a culture of flex working.
Yes.
Instead.
Yes. Awesome.
Yeah. So I think since the pandemic, since COVID, and now that diversity, equity, inclusion, and well-being are such hot topics in the conversations right now, it is a great opportunities for organizations to reevaluate every layer of their organization, their workforce, their candidates, their offering, right? The package, the full package, wording in their job description, right? And also, are they thinking outside the box? Are they being innovative? What are some of the sticking points that they can get rid of just by implementing or considering new systems and new technologies?
Yeah. I think it's a great time to innovate, great time to reconsider, and to, really take ownership of a new way of operating as business leaders. So in closing, anything that you want to share with listeners? So if they're HR professionals, if they're leaders in organizations, anything that might be helpful in terms of whether it's a strategy or statistics or anything like that before we close?
I would say traditionally, organizations were the ones to be in charge of and leading the conversation when it came to how they're structured, what they offer, right? They are the ones in power. And if they had a good brand and offered a great salary, then they would attract candidates left, right, and center. There has been a huge societal shift. So now the candidates are the ones that have the say, that have the power, and that have the power to choose now. So I challenge organizations in this day and age to create a better package and a better offering. Keep an eye out on the trends when it comes to well-being, diversity, equity, inclusion, and benefits as well, so they can cast a wider net and attract those candidates that they want and need.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's been an awesome time spending time with you to just talk about this not new topic, but very important topic considering what we've experienced in the last 2-3 years. So thank you so much, Natasha.
Thank you so much for having me, CJ.